17 through 21. Before we get started, Chelsea's friend Ashley, she attends at Renton. I'm sure you guys got the emails and stuff, but she just went to surgery just a little bit ago. So that's really all I have for update for that. But yeah, they could really use prayers because the baby's only 25 weeks, so it's pretty small. So let's start, and I'll go ahead and start with prayer. Our Father in heaven, Lord, we come to you and ask you now to be with Ashley and with their baby, and I pray that you be with the doctors taking care of both of them. We know, Lord, that you have the power to take care of this situation, and pray that you do that and be with them and with their family. Lord, we also ask you to be with our congregation, and pray that you would bless us and be with us as we are still searching for a preacher, and help us in finding one that fits in here well and works well for your kingdom. And Lord, we also ask you to be with class tonight and be with me and help me to articulate the things that I've been studying well and bring glory to your word, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so tonight we're covering Judges chapter 17 through 21. It's a lot of material. So we're going to move pretty fast. When I tested out how long the sermon took, the first time it took me 60 minutes, and then I got it down to 50 minutes. And class is only 45 minutes, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so Judges chapter 17 through 21. It's going to cover two separate events in Israel's history, but we're going to start kind of covering both of them right here. They both are going to show the failing morality of the Israelite nation. We're going to see a lot of moral relativism going on. And then also syncretism, which Sam talked about 2 Sundays ago. He did a whole sermon on it. So that's where you're going to see that they've taken the religion, that God, the law, that God's given them, but then also taken stuff from the other nations around them and kind of added to it. So they're still, worshiping God, but you're going to see it kind of in a corrupted way. So we're going to see that as well in the story. Something that stands out with these two stories is we don't have the regular cycle that we see that happens throughout the book of Judges. I have it up here with idolatry, and then they go into some sort of oppression, and then they kind of repent and cry out to God. He sends them a judge that delivers them. Neither of these events, that's going to happen. Both of them basically just bad things happen, and then more bad things happen, and just shows kind of the corruption of the nation. And then the last thing before we get really into the text is the timeline of both these events. Both of them, and we'll look at them when I hit the verses actually, but both of them seem to actually not happen at this time period at the end of book of Judges. Samson's like 300 years after they enter into the land. And both these events seem to actually have taken place much earlier in the time period of the Judges. And I'll point out those verses that kind of hint to that possibility when we get there. Because of time, I'm not going to be able to read everything, so I'm going to have to paraphrase some stuff. But we're going to go ahead and start off by reading the first 6 verses of chapter 17. Now there was a man from the mountains of Ephraim, whose name was Micah, and he said to his mother, "The 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you, and on which you put a curse, even saying in my ear, 'Here is the silver with me,' I took it." And his mother said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my son." So when he had returned the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother said, "I had wholly dedicated the silver from my hand to the Lord for my son, to make a carved image and a molded image. Now therefore I will return it to you." Thus he returned the silver to his mother. Then his mother took 200 shekels of silver and gave it to the silversmith, and he made it into a carved image and a molded image, and they were in the house of Micah. The man Micah had a shrine and made an ephod and household idols, and he consecrated one of his sons, who became a priest. In those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. So this story, starts off with a man, and again, we're going to talk about the morality of the people. He steals from his own mother, which I feel like even among thieves that would be frowned upon, is stealing from your own family. So we have that happen, showing the kind of character that he is. And then the mother also, he admits that he did it, and she started out by cursing whoever took the money and cursing the money. And then when she finds out it was her son that took it, she starts praising him, for returning it. I'm assuming not for actually taking it, but she's praising him. So I feel like you can kind of see some of that morality of hers, like when she doesn't know it's her son, she's all angry and cursing whoever took it. And then when she finds out it's her son, she's all like, oh, like, you're so good. And then another thing, and it could just be me reading in the text, but it says, to me, it reads that she was planning on dedicating all 1,100 pieces of silver to the Lord. But then in reality, she only takes 200 of it. So I don't know if that's just reading into it too much or not. And then also we see here with Micah, he makes this wooden image, and they have the silversmith make an idol and ephod and things. So he's kind of taking the religions around, and it seems like he's worshiping other gods as well with the idols, and now he's making an idol specifically to worship God. And then he also takes one of his sons and makes him a priest, right? So we know that the priests are supposed to come from the tribe of Levi, and then specifically from the family of Aaron. And here it seems, I'm assuming that he's from Ephraim, not from Levi, especially with the next part of the story coming on. So we kind of just see also the syncretism going on of taking some stuff from other places, other religions, and kind of combining them, things like that. And then the last, verse 6, in those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So we're going to see that appear multiple times throughout these 5 chapters. And I think it's a really good summation of really the whole book. We're going to dig into that at the very end, actually, as well. So the next section is going to be Judges 17, 7 through 13. Excuse me, 7 through 13. Now there was a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah. He was a Levite and was staying there. The man departed from the city of Bethlehem in Judah to stay wherever he could find a place. Then he came to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, as he journeyed. And Micah said to him, "Where do you come from?" So he said to him, "I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I am on my way to find a place to stay." Micah said to him, "Dwell with me and be a father and a priest to me, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver per year, a suit of clothes, and your sustenance." So the Levite went in, and then the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became like one of his sons to him. So Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest, and lived in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, "Now I know that the Lord will be good to me, since I have a Levite as a priest." So here we have this Levite looking for a place to stay. It seems like he's traveling, and Micah accepts him into his house and seems like is taking care of him, which is, I think, fairly common practice at that time when you had travelers. We see like Abraham do that with travelers, things like that. They have a discussion. He decides he's going to hire this Levite to be his household priest, which is, I think, nowhere found in God's law that you should have a household priest. I think that, again, is taking from the religions around them where they have household gods and household priests, things like that. It doesn't specify here that this Levite is from the line of Aaron either. It just says he's a Levite, so it's, I guess, one step up from his son, but not quite all the way there. And this section of verses ends in 13, where Micah says, "Now I know that the Lord will be good to me, since I have a Levite as a priest." I'm going to mention that because we're going to kind of come back to that in the next chapter. I'm going to refer back to that statement that he makes. All right. So it seems like possibly some time has passed, but we're going to stay with the same characters for this chapter as well, with some additions of some people from the tribe of Dan. So I am going to read this section. Let's see, verse 1 in chapter 18. "In those days there was no king in Israel, and in those days the tribe of Danites were seeking an inheritance for itself to dwell in, for until that day their inheritance among the tribes of Israel had not fallen to them. So the children of Dan sent 5 men of their family from their territory, men of valor from Zorah and Eshtaol, to spy out the land and search it. They said to them, "Go search the land." So they went to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. While they were at the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. They turned aside and said to him, "Who brought you here? What are you doing here in this place? And what do you have here?" He said to them, "Thus and so Micah did to me. He has hired me, and I have become his priest." So they said to him, "Please inquire of God, that we may know whether the journey on which we go will be prosperous." And the priest said to them, "Go in peace. The presence of God be with you on your way." So here, these spies are going into the land to try to find a place to, settle. And they also seem to go by Micah's house, and it seems like Micah has invited them in to stay as well, possibly. And they recognize this Levite. It seems like maybe he has an accent or something that they're able to recognize him by. I know some versions that I read through specified accent. Other ones just say recognize him. But somehow they recognize him, so they, talk about what he's doing there. And what I find interesting in basically verse 5, where it says, "Please inquire of God," they ask him to check with God to see, and he responds, "Yes, you'll be blessed in what you do." But I just find it interesting that it doesn't say, "and God said," or anything, because I feel like normally when they ask of God, and I could be wrong, that doesn't always, but I feel like it usually says, "And God said this," or God tells them to tell them this. And here it does not say that. So I think probably the priests, since...
What does that tell you? Where did he get God's word
from his own mind, right?
Mind.
Yeah, so... Yep, there's no king, and everyone does it right. I think he's just... we've already talked about he doesn't seem to be from the tribe of or Aaron, so he's not a real priest. So I don't think God would respond to him if he made a request of God. I think he just is telling what they want to hear. So this next section, we are going to just summarize. Basically, these spies from Dan, they go out, they find this town, Laish, and let's see. In verse 7, it says, "The people that were there, they dwelt safely in a manner of the Sidonians, quiet and secure." That statement is made 2 times, and then it's kind of made a partial time somewhere else. So just remember that, because I'll come back to it when we get to the last time they say it. I'll say why I think it says that so many times. But so basically, they go out, they find this area that they want to conquer, so they go back, they get their people. They have 600 warriors, and those warriors are now marching to go take over this territory, and then they end this section at the house of Micah. That's basically what's covered in those verses. The next verses, 14 through 20, we will read. So they're all standing outside Micah's door, or area now. Verse 14. "Then the 5 men who had gone to spy out the country of Laish answered and said to their brethren, 'Do you know what there are in those houses? An ephod, household idols, carved image, and a molded image. Now therefore consider what you do.' So they turned aside, and they came to the house of the young Levite man, to the house of Micah, and greeted him. The 600 men were armed with weapons of war, who were of the children of Dan, stood by the entrance of the gate. Then the 5 men who had gone to spy out the land went up. Entering there, they took the carved image, the ephod, the household idols, and the molded image. And the priest stood at the entrance of the gate with the 600 men who were armed with weapons of war. Then they went into Micah's house and took the carved image and the ephod and the household idols and the molded image. And the priest said to them, 'What are you doing?' And they said to him, 'Be quiet, put your hand over your mouth, and come with us. Be a father and a priest to us. It is better for you to be a priest to the household of one man, or that of a priest to a tribe and a family of Israel.' So the priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod and the household idols and the carved image and took his place among the people." So here, as the 600 warriors of Dan, they were traveling, the 5 spies who had been, seems like, treated nicely by Micah, as they're traveling past, they're like, "Hey, do you know he's got, an idol and a priest and an ephod? What should we do about it?" And they decide, well, we're going to go take that stuff. They're going to go rob him now. So they show up, and the priest of Micah's is like, hey, what are you guys doing, right? And they tell him, well, why don't you come be with us rather than staying here? Because it's better to serve, a whole family or whole tribe or a clan or a tribe rather than one family. And it says that the Levite was glad to do it. And then it says that he went in the house and he grabbed the stuff, right? So referring back to chapter 17, where it said that he became like a son to Micah, right? So that's like the relationship they had. And now he gets like this better offer, and he's just like, yeah, I'm just going to leave, and I'm going to steal all this stuff when I go. And this is supposed to be a priest, right? So just showing the moral like decay of the people and like what they find, oh, this works for me today, so this is what I'll do, but tomorrow like I'm going to change my mind, and this is the right thing to do. It's never that way today. Yeah. That's true. I did not connect that. Yeah, it starts with him stealing, and now he's getting stolen from. Yeah. No. All right. The next section is 21 through 26. Then they turned and departed and put the little ones, the livestock, and the goods in front of them. When they were a good way from the house of Micah, the men who were in the house came near Micah's, While the men who were in the house near Micah's house gathered together and overtook the children of Dan, and they called out to the children of Dan. So they turned around and said to Micah, what ails you? What have you gathered such a company? So they said, you have taken away my gods, which I made, and the priest, and you have gone away. Now what more do I have? How can you say to me, what ails you? And the children of Dan said to him, do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry men fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household. And the children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. I love their sarcastic response here. Like, he comes up with an army, and they're like, what are you chasing us for? And he's like, what do you mean, why are we chasing? Like, it's very obvious. But basically, we have these two Israelite groups that realistically, if either of them were worshiping an idol, like the other group should kill them, right? And now instead of that, they are almost coming to blows, fighting over who gets to keep the idols and the ephod and things. As I said, there's all these stories, they just keep getting worse and piling on more and more of the moral decay that's going on. And here, the Danites, like they were shown niceness by Micah, and now they're stealing from him. And they kind of have this, might is right thing where they were very intimidating with all their men with, swords and stuff. So the next chapter, or the next section, 20, so Micah in verse 13 here, I must have passed it. Oh, no, sorry. Okay. What verse was it? Yeah, it's 13 to 17. Well, it's in here somewhere. I don't see it. But basically in here, Micah's like, I have nothing left. If you take that stuff, I have nothing left, which is that reference I was talking about in chapter 17, where he's like, oh, now that I have a priest, surely God's going to bless me. And I feel like that kind of links with this one, because it's like, that priest is kind of your whole problem here almost. Like the priest led him to this problem. Verse 24, where he says that. Yeah. Now what do I have? Yeah. I just kind of felt like those two linked almost, where it's like he was so proud that he had a priest, and now God's surely going to bless him. And here, obviously, God did not bless him, and it was a fake priest. So, 17 through 31. So this is where they basically are going to go in and conquer this town of Laish. And again, it's going to say that the people of Laish, they dwell in safety in a manner of the Sidonians, quiet and secure. And it's mentioned, like I said, 2 times, then kind of mentioned another time. And I feel like it's mentioned so many times because this is a Canaanite, city or area. and they're the only people in this whole story that don't do anything wrong. Like kind of showing, where the Israelite morality is compared to these people. One of the versions I was reading actually said that they were like a peaceful people, and here you have like this nice peaceful people, and then the Israelites are going to go in and slaughter them. In this story, it's almost flipped from what you should be seeing in how the Israelites are acting compared to the Canaanites. So verse 30 here is going to talk about Jonathan. Then the children of Dan set up for themselves the carved image, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, and his sons were priests in the tribe of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up for themselves Micah's carved images, which he had made all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh. So this verse 30, New King James says Manasseh. Does anyone else have anything different from Manasseh? You guys have Moses? Yeah. So it looks like there's some ancient texts that have Moses and some have Manasseh. And when I was looking, so Manasseh, if this is like Manasseh, his children are not, like these are not the right lineage of his children, and the dating is all wrong, because they would be like, in Egypt still. But if it says Moses, then Gershom makes sense that it would be his son. So there is some ideas when I was reading that people thought maybe the text writers, when they wrote it, to basically keep shame from Moses' house, they added like an extra letter or two at the end, which then makes it Manasseh. But I don't know. If it is supposed to be Moses there, then it would push this whole story to like the beginning of the book of Judges rather than at the end of the book of Judges. So that's just one of the verses in this for this event that might push it forward. So.
Sometimes it's used to refer to the son of David.
Yeah.
I think the way they use that phrase, they talk about the lineage of
Yeah.
So that would make sense either way.
Yeah.
The lineage of.
Yeah, it could be.
Jonathan up the chain to Moses.
Yeah. And he's a Levite, which a child of Manasseh wouldn't be a Levite, right? But of Moses, it would be a Levite, right? And so it makes sense that it's Moses, in the lineage-wise, since he's calling himself a Levite as well. But yeah, that's really all I have for that. So that is the end of the first event. Does anyone have any comments or questions for that event?
I think the most important part of that verse is that at the whole time that the house of God was in Shiloh,
Mm-hmm.
so we're getting all this other stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
Where it seems like it's more of a, it's a religion for profit. The guy's paid to be a priest of the house. And
Yeah.
these molten images and all this value and money and changing of the possessions of it all. And the Levite lied, he cheated, he stole.
Yeah.
And then you hear about, like you said, this contrast to a Canaanite city where they're unsuspecting and peaceful and not doing any of that stuff. And I think that compare and contrast is one of the points.
Yeah.
There are still people worshiping God correctly in Shiloh.
Yeah.
But here we have a whole group of Israelites who are doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Who are not.
Doing
Yeah.
their own thing, right?
Yep. Yeah. All right. We're going to keep moving to chapter 19. So this is going to be the next 3 chapters is basically all multiple events, but the same kind of storyline. So we're going to go ahead and start reading this section. And it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel, and there was a certain Levite staying in the remote mountains of Ephraim. He took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine played the harlot against him and went away from him to her father's house in Bethlehem in Judah, and was there for 4 whole months. Then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back, having his servant and a couple of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house, and then the father of the young man saw him. He was glad to meet him. So again, it starts off telling everyone that there's no king in Israel at this time. The concubine that he has, I think it's interesting that he has a concubine that, I don't know the technicalities of it all, but I'm assuming if you have a concubine, that means you have a wife first, and then you have a concubine. So I think it's interesting that he's sleeping with multiple people. but then it says that the concubine was playing a harlot, so then she starts sleeping with other people, and that's what they fight about. Like, it's part of that morality issue. Like, he's okay doing it, but he's not okay having her do it. But basically, they have a fight. I think not all versions actually say that she's playing a harlot. Some of them just said they have a fight. But she leaves, goes down to her father's house, and then he takes some time, and then he heads down there. So I'm going to paraphrase this section, 4 through 9. These are the events that happen while he's at the father's house. But basically, he goes, the dad's excited to see him. I think the dad's probably excited. I don't know. The dad might be excited to have his daughter home too, but the dad keeps like trying to keep the guy from leaving. So he's there for 3 days. It says, like having food and drink and stuff. And then finally he's ready to get up and go on the 4th day. And the dad's like, oh, just stay and have like a meal first. And so then the guy's like, okay, fine. So he stays, and then it's too late in the day, so he can't leave. So then he wakes up the next day, he's like, okay, I'm going to go. And the dad again, he's like, wait, stay, have a meal, have some food, some drinks, you know. And the guy's like, okay, I'm going to stay and do that. But then that's the 5th day. And on the 5th day, he's finally like, okay, I need to go. It's kind of a weird part of the story, I feel like, in the whole scheme of things. I don't know if it's trying to show maybe like excess or gluttony maybe going on, because we're going to see that his, the dad tried to keep him there, and he was okay with it, and he stayed, and he left so late in the day that he's not able to get where he's going, and that's going to lead to all sorts of problems. But that's kind of what's happened in those set of verses there. All right, so we're going to start in verse 10. However, the man was not willing to spend that night, so he arose and departed and came opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. With him there were 2 saddled donkeys. His concubine was also with him. They were near Jebus, and the day was far spent. And the servant said to his master, come, please, let us turn aside into the city of the Jebusites and lodge in it. But his master said to him, we will not turn aside here into the city of foreigners, who are not of the children of Israel. We shall go on to Jebush. So he said to his servants, come, let us draw near to one of these places and spend the night in Jebush or in Ramah. And they passed by and went their way, and the sun went down on them near Jebush, which belongs to Benjamin. They entered aside there to go to a lodge in Jebush. And when he went in, he sat down in the open square of the city, for no one would take him into his house to spend the night. So this is the 5th day after staying. He finally leaves. They pass this. It starts getting dark out. So the servant's like, hey, let's go stay in this town close by. And the Levite, the master, says, no, like that's not a town ruled by the children of Israel. So we're not going to go there. We're going to go to this town of Gibeah, excuse me. And I find that really interesting again, because this is, between the 2 stories, this is the second time a Canaanite town is going to be mentioned, and nothing negative is said about this Canaanite town. And if you know what's going to happen in the rest of the story, bad things happen, and everyone in the story, I feel like, is in the wrong at some point. Like, they all do bad things. And so I just find it interesting again, like the children of Israel, he's like, no, I'm not going to go stay in the Canaanite. I need to stay with the children of Israel. And because of that, all this bad stuff happens. And so that's, again, I feel like the Canaanites compared to the Israelites, like the scale of who was supposed to be the good guys and the bad guys is kind of flipped on its head. All right, so I think I'm going to skip reading this part as well. But basically, there's an old man. So they're staying in the town square, and no one invites them into the house. It says none of the Benjamites invited them in, which would be inviting them in was part of like the tradition back there, how you would treat guests. And so it's kind of disrespectful that they're not doing that. So this old man comes in from the field, and it specifies that the old man is not from the tribe of Benjamin. And that man's going to invite them to stay in the house. And I think it specifies that he's not, because the Benjamites are supposed to be like the really bad people in this story, which we'll get to. So I think that's why it's kind of clarifying, like he was not from the tribe of Benjamin. He was living in the town, but he's not from that tribe. So he basically says, no, come stay at my house. the priest guy, I think he's referred to as master for a while, but the master, he is like, I have my own food and I can take care of myself. And the old man's like, no, like I got it, don't worry about it, come stay with me. So that's that section of verses. And this is where the story turns really bad. So they're back at the house. It says eating and drinking, I think is how it left them off. And then verse 22, we're going to read through 26. So they were enjoying themselves. Suddenly, certain men of the city, perverted men, surrounded the house and beat on the door. They spoke to the master of the house and the old man, saying, bring out the man who came to your house, that we may know him carnally. But the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said, no, my brethren, I beg you, do not act so wickedly. Seeing this man has come into my house, do not commit this outrage. Look, here is my virgin daughter and the man's concubine. Let me bring them out now. Humble them and do with them as you please. But to this man do not do such a vile thing. But the man would not heed him. So the man took his concubine and brought her out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until morning. And when the day began to break, they let her go. Then the woman came as the day was dawning and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was till it was light. I don't even know what to say. Like, this is just such a terrible event going on. It reminds you of another story, I'm sure, Sodom and Gomorrah, a very famous one, which we still, like, if you mention Sodom and Gomorrah, people know exactly what you're talking about. And this event is also like a stain on Israel's history. Hosea mentions it 2 different times, referring back to the city about like the sin of this city, or I think one was like, you've sinned since that city, Gibeah. So this is, like, even for the Israelites, they're going to realize that this was really bad thing that happened. I don't understand anyone in this story. I don't understand the old man offering up his daughter and the other guy's concubine. And then, like, I don't understand how you could do that to someone, like, as a man not protecting your own people, your daughter, or, I mean, this man's wife. And then the Levite, it seems like, pushes his own concubine out. To take care of himself, he pushes his own concubine out the door, which then it says, you know, that she's basically raped all night long until she basically dies from it. And then the next morning, he gets up. Oh, that's in the next chapter, my next section. But the next morning, he gets up, and it seems like he's not even going to go looking for her, the way I read it. When her master rose in the morning, he opened the door of the house and went out to go his way. Like, it seems like he was like, I'm going to just leave. And then there was the concubine. Like, it almost seemed like he forgot about her, was planning on leaving. Like, he slept good that night, it seems like. Like, he arose in the morning, makes it sound like he went to sleep. I don't understand it. Just the moral decay of everyone in the whole area, in the whole story.
I think that's the key to the story. I mean, it's just, you know, once you start going in that direction, you don't stop.
Yeah.
You become totally degraded as a human being can become.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's trying to show the children of Israel, like, it's not just, I mean, right now we're focused on a group of people, but it's really the whole people of Israel that are degrading. So let's see.
And it's not going to get better. I mean, this story is not going to get better.
No, it doesn't.
It goes from terrible to more terrible.
We'll get there. Let's see. So the man, so she was basically dead, or is dead, I'm assuming at this point. He picks her up, puts her on the donkey, takes her home. Verse 29, he enters his house, he took a knife, laid hold of his concubine, and divided her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout the territory of Israel. And so it was that all who saw it said, no such deed has been done or seen from the day that the children of Israel came up from the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, confer, and speak up. So, kind of gruesome, but he cuts up her body, 12 pieces, sends him out. We see this happen also. Saul does this in 1 Samuel as a call to war. But he cuts up an oxen, sends it out, and the 12 tribes, like one each tribe. And then supposedly they're supposed to bring that back, and then you can kind of reassemble the animal and see, like, okay, who didn't show up? Because we're calling to war. Which tribe didn't send anyone to help us fight, right? So I don't know if this was like a tradition that already existed, and this Levite man, just instead of using oxen, used her body, or if Saul just took it from this event. I don't know like which one came first. I guess which one came first, but I don't know if it was a tradition already or he kind of almost created this tradition. But basically this chapter is going to end with a wake-up call to the children of Israel, and they're all going to gather in the next chapter and do something about it. So, chapter 20. Let's see. I'm going to paraphrase most of this chapter, actually. But it's going to start off saying the children of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba. Dan's like at the top of the nation, Beersheba's at the bottom. So like the entire nation comes out. They all kind of get together. This Levite retells the story of what happened. And then it's going to end verse 11 here. So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united together as one man. So the whole nation basically came together, heard the events that happened, and they're all agreed, like, this was terrible. It's a wake-up call. Like, we need to do something about it. So they're all agreed they're now going to go to war. Doesn't have to be war, but they're going to go get these men from the city and execute them. 12 through 17, before they go and kill all these men, they send, people to the tribe of Benjamin and say, hey, send these men to us so we can kill them, right? They did this terrible act. They deserve to die. Send your men out so we can kill them. And Benjamin says, no, like, we're not going to do it. We're going to fight you. So the Benjamin people, they are willing now to go to war against their own brethren to protect these men who did this terrible act, right? Basically, there's going to be a bunch of numbers of, they had this many people, they had this many people. Something that stood out to me was the Benjaminites had 700 men who were left-handed, it said, that were excellent warriors somewhere in there, talking about using slings. And that's not the first time left-handed people are talked about from the tribe of Benjamin. Ehud, the other judge that we had, that he's left-handed as well. And then later in 1 Chronicles 12, some of David's mighty men, it's going to say they were left-handed and they used, I think, bows and slings as well. So I just thought that was kind of interesting that left-handed apparently like ran through the genealogy of the Benjaminites. Also, does anyone know what Benjamin means? No? All right. Benjamin means son of my right hand. And I just think that's funny because son of my right hand, and then it keeps talking about left-handed warriors that were like elite warriors that were all left-handed. So, let's see. The next 18 through 48, it's pretty much the end of the chapter, is the actual battle sequence that's going on. Part of this story gets really weird to me. I have just one assumption. If it's not that, I don't know why. But basically, they get all their warriors up. They go ask God, what should we do? Like, who should we send first to attack? And God tells them to send Judah first, right? And then, so Judah gets ready to go fight. Judah goes, fights the Benjaminites. It's like, it didn't specify how many people fought when Judah fought first, but all the Israelites, it was like 400,000 warriors against 27,000 warriors of the Benjamites, right? So it's super lopsided. In the first battle, it says that the Israelites are going to lose 22,000 men. So they lose this battle where it's super lopsided. They're going to lose 22,000 men. So they retreat. They go back. The next day, they're all upset. They go back to God and said, God, like, should we continue fighting our own brethren? And God again says, yes, go fight them. So again, the second day, they go and they fight them again. And this time they lose 18,000 people. And they lose again and have to retreat. So that's what I'm saying. The story kind of gets weird, I feel like, because God's telling them, go attack. And then they keep losing. The only assumption I have is like God just punishing the whole nation for all the corruption that's been going on. Other than that, I don't know why he would have them lose, but they finally go the third time. It specifies that they did sacrifices and made offerings and asked God, like, should we attack them again? And God again a third time says, yes, this time I will hand them to you. So they go to fight and they win. It kind of uses the same tactics they used in the Battle of Ai, where they send an army in and then they pretend that they're getting beat and they retreat. and then the Benjamites chase them, and then they have another people that go in, destroy the town. They end up killing a bunch of Benjamites. 46. 47. Let's read 47 and 48. Oh, let's read 46 too. So all who fell of Benjamin that day were 25,000 men who drew the sword. All these were men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled towards the wilderness of the rock of Rimmon, and they stayed at the rock of Rimmon for 4 months. And the men of Israel turned back against the children of Benjamin and struck them down at the edge of the sword. From every city, men and beasts and all who were found, they also set fire to all the cities they could find. So they ended up killing all the warriors, except 600 who have now fled up into these hills. Then the men of Israel, since they can't get those people, they turn back and they just start going scorched earth basically on the Benjamite area. They kill everyone, everything they can find, burning down all the cities. And so that's how that chapter ends. The next chapter picks up. I got 4 minutes left in a whole chapter. All right. Now the men of Israel had sworn an oath at Mizpah. So Mizpah is where they had gathered before. So I think this is pointing back to the first time they met. And they made this oath that none of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin as a wife. And the people came to the house of God and remained there before God till evening. They lifted up their voices and wept bitterly and said, O Lord God of Israel, why has this come to pass in Israel that today there should be one tribe missing in Israel? So I think taking the end of the last verse, or last chapter, 48, where it says they went and they destroyed and killed everyone. And then it talks about this oath that they had sworn about not marrying any Benjaminite to any daughters to Benjamin. Both of them, I think, are overreactions that they had. I could see as they're there and they're so angry, they're like, I'm never going to marry my children to anyone in Benjamin, and making kind of a rash vow. And then I think they kind of went overboard when they killed all the warriors and they killed that town, and then they just went and killed all the other men and women of Benjamin. Both of them, I think, are overreactions, which leads them to now basically having wiped out an entire tribe, right? And so now they're all upset after doing this, so now they're going to make some other bad choices, which we're going to talk about. Verse 4 through 12. So they go, oh yeah, we made another vow, and that was whoever doesn't come fight with us, we're going to kill. So they gather who had come and helped, who sent warriors to help fight in these battles. They find this town or this area that didn't send anyone. So they're like, well, we're going to go kill them now. So they take 12,000 soldiers, they march out, they kill everyone in this town except for the virgin women. Because their plan is to kill everyone, take those women, and use them as now brides for the Benjamite people that are still around, the 600 men. So they do that. Like I said, the story, they make poor choices, I feel like. So they do that, but they only kidnap or take 400 women. So they still need 200 more women. So they're like, well, what are we going to do? That's kind of 13 through 22. They realize there's still not enough women, but there's an event of some sort, a celebration of some sort, where these, I'm assuming virgin women are going out to do this ceremony. So they're going to tell the men of Benjamin, go lie in wait for them, then kidnap the ones that you find attractive, that you want to marry, take them for your wives. And then when their brothers and fathers come to us and say, we made a vow not to give them, we're going to tell them, it's okay, you didn't break your vow, you didn't give them to, we did not give them to you, but they were taken. And I really just feel like this is, they're following the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law, right? And, God says that it says God will not be mocked. And I feel like that's what they're doing. They're making a mockery of this vow that they have made. They thought it was more important to keep a vow than it was to, well, I'll get that later. Never mind. I'll come back to that. The end of the chapter, 23 through 25, is where they actually says they did that. And the children of Benjamin did so. They took enough wives for their number from those who danced, whom they caught. Then they went and returned to their inheritance. They rebuilt the cities and dwelt in them. So the children of Israel departed from there at that time, every man of his tribe and family. They went out from there, every man to his inheritance. And then the whole book is going to end with, in those days there was no king in Israel, Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. I'm going to have to skip some stuff, but basically, the book of Judges being wrapped up by this very last sentence. In those days, there's no king, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes, right? Very much moral relativism is doing what's right in your own eyes, right? If you think it's right, it's okay to do. We see that with Micah and his mom, where it's like, it was the son, she didn't know who took it, it's terrible. It's her son that took it, she's okay with it. We see that realistically with this whole story. It started with one woman being raped terribly, and the entire nation of Israel is upset about it, rightfully so. Then they go, and it ends with a story of them basically taking 600 women, killing all their friends and family, and then giving them off to be husbands where they're basically being raped again. And it's okay in that scenario because they didn't want to break a vow of giving their wives out. So it's like, again, this moral relativism of like, this instance is terrible, this instance it's okay. Moses told the people in a bunch of places, Exodus 15:26, Deuteronomy 6:18, Deuteronomy 12:25, 12:28, 13:18, and 21:9, tells them to do what is right in the sight of God. And I feel like it really compares to here where they're doing what's right in their own eyes compared to Moses told them do what's right in God's eyes, right? And God says, Scripture says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor my ways, nor your ways my ways. And there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it is the way of death. Like that's what you get when you're doing only what you think is right, when you do what's right in your own eyes. So that's the last part. The first part of the sentence where it says there's no king in Israel. The Israelites were supposed to have God as their king, right? He's supposed to be the sovereign one telling them what to do. They're looking to him for leadership. But in the time of the Judges, it says they had no king, which I think is a double reference because they actually didn't have a king, and this was written later when they did have a king. But like God was supposed to be their king. They needed a king to tell them what to do, apparently, right? And later they're going to ask for a king. They're going to ask for a king, but instead of turning to God, asking him to be their king, they ask for a man to be their king, right? So then you have all the kings going on. We have some good kings and bad kings, and even the good kings, you have moral failings there, moral corruption going on. And then in the New Testament, finally we end up with a king of kings, right? We have Jesus that comes along, and he is the king that Israel needed all along, and he's the king that we need in our life, right? In America, we're proud to be free, right? We have like the land of the free is like a slogan of America, you could say, right? And that sounds very much to me like there was no king in Israel, and we're the land of the free. And then it has whoever did what was right in their own eyes sounds very much like live your truth or you be you, which is something we hear a lot of society saying, right? But without God as our compass and our eyes on him and finding out what's right, it's very easy to look at Judges, and that's where it ends up when we live that life of having no king, which we should have as Jesus, and doing what's right in our own eyes, which should be not our own eyes, but God's eyes, right? Doing what's right in God's eyes. So I hope that wraps up the book of Judges, because I feel like that really kind of covers it. But we don't really have time for questions. So after class, if you have any, you can talk to me. Thank you.